Now here is the risk that the Browns had to take with I love you, Cleveland. And I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan along with Ryan Smith. Hope you've had a great week and a week forthcoming. We've got a lot to cover today on the show. Nick Padone, host of Big Play Cleveland and director of programming here for our network, will be joining us for a couple of segments. Got a lot to cover. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing tremendous, Bruce. I woke up in a really good mood. The weather's really nice. It's starting to feel a little bit crispy like fall, and I don't know how you can beat that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you sound in a very effervescent state today.
I'm chipper.
Let's get right to it. The Guardians, I hope I'm proven wrong, Ryan, about them not making the playoffs, but they're certainly attempting to do just that. And that'd be fine with me. It wouldn't be the first time, that's for sure. But how about the win last night over the Mets? Entering the top of the seventh inning, the game was tied at 2, and the Guardians played small ball. C.J. Kafis, the rookie, just brought up, and Rocchio hit soft singles after the Mets relief pitcher, Tyler Rogers, had had retired the first two Guardians that he faced in the inning. He had 2 outs when this rally occurred. Then Quan got a soft single to center field to score Kafis, and it held up for the win, thanks to the combined relief work of Festa, Allard, and Junis to work the last 3 innings and preserve the victory. The Guards have won 18 of their last 25 games. They have fought back to be within only a game and a half of the wild card spot. And I hope I'm proven wrong, Ryan. I really do. But I still think the odds are against him without Clase especially. But again, this bullpen is so enriched. Who knows? Maybe they can do it.
Hey, never say never, Bruce. That's the way Cleveland sports seem to be. Our Guardians can get hot at any given moment. 1.5 games back from that final wild card spot, and I'm not going to get my hopes up, Bruce, but yes, you're 7 games back behind the Detroit Tigers. They look like they're not playing up to par, and you got 6 games left against the Detroit Tigers, so a chance to cannibalize them a little bit. Maybe some magic, Bruce.
Yeah, they're 67-48, as you mentioned, 7 behind. And, of course, for the wild card, you've got Toronto, Detroit, and Houston right now owning the top spots as far as the divisional leaders, but Boston, Seattle, and the New York Yankees are ahead of both Texas and the Guardians as far as the wild card is concerned. Obviously, Toronto, 67-48, has now claimed the best record in the American League, overtaking the Yankees as they have in the East. But really, one of the interesting stories in baseball right now are the Boston Red Sox. They are 64-51. They're the hottest team in the majors right now. They're only 3 games behind Toronto. They've overtaken the Yankees. They've won 7 in a row, 9 of 10. And Garrett Crochet last night, Cy Young candidate, legitimate, 6-2 victory against Kansas City, 7 innings, 2 runs, 4 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. And if you look at the comparison between Crochet and Skubal, everybody's just assumed that Skubal was going to win the Cy Young. Just as Lee Corso would say, hold on, wait a minute, not so fast. Skubal's 11-3, and Crochet is 13-4. Skubal has pitched in 140 2/3 innings, and Crochet 148 1/3. Skubal has 181 strikeouts, Crochet 183. ERA, Skubal 2.18, and Crochet 2.24. That's pretty darn close, so I think it's still up in the air. Crochet has caught him, and now it's going to depend on what they do between now and the end of the season, Ryan.
Yeah, Tariq Skubal, based on those numbers, Bruce, more efficient, but Garrett Crochet has been tremendous, and that was one of the biggest offseason moves. You mentioned how glad do you think he is to get out of Chicago, the White Sox, and the Red Sox are as hot as any team in baseball, Bruce, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and of course, the Houston Astros holding on against Seattle with a 3-game lead in the West. The National League is interesting because Philadelphia and the Mets have been going at it all year long in the East, and thanks to the Guardians' last 2 victories against the Mets, Phillies now have a 2.5 game lead over them. The National League Central, the Milwaukee Brewers now have the best record in baseball at 69-44. They've opened up a 4-game lead on the Cubs. My goodness, are the Cubs going to choke again? One of the lowest payrolls in baseball, the Milwaukee Brewers. They're 13-6 in their last 29 games, and they're also road games. Their last 29 road games, they are have a great record. They're also 11-1 in their last 12 road games. 6 straight road victories. They're 44-16 since May 25th. That's a franchise record. And remember, they got rid of Devin Williams, went to the Yankees, and Willie Adames. This is quite a story. How about a World Series between Toronto and Milwaukee? Who would have predicted that or laid a bet on that in Vegas before the season started?
It's given flashbacks, Bruce, of when it's the Texas Rangers versus the Arizona Diamondbacks not a few years ago. You know, that's a lot more fun, in my opinion, than a Dodgers-Yankees World Series.
I totally agree. The networks wouldn't agree. The trade deadline has come and gone. The big, most significant deals, of course, was Philadelphia getting the closer Duran from Minnesota and outfielder Harrison Bader. San Diego gets Mason Miller, the tremendous relief pitcher of Oakland Athletics, wherever they play. Ryan O'Hearn. Boston gets Dustin May. Dodgers are so loaded with starting pitching. Detroit gets Charlie Morton and Chris Paddock. Relief pitchers Finnegan and Montero. Houston gets back Carlos Correa. I found that interesting. They also get Urias and Sanchez, an infielder and an outfielder. Seattle getting Eugenio Suarez. That's the biggest acquisition of anybody. Of course, they had already previously gotten Josh Naylor, the former Indian and Guardian. Texas gets Merrill Kelly. And Toronto gets Bieber. Shane Bieber, I think he's scheduled to start the game on Saturday, Ryan.
It's crazy, Bruce. They're like the Toronto Blue Jays. We're their farm system. Shane Bieber, you got Andres Jimenez, Miles Straw, a lot of old friends from our Cleveland Guardians.
Well, you know
and Bruce,
why that is.
You
know why that is.
Mark Shapiro.
Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins.
But hey, if the Guardians don't make the playoffs, knock on wood, I mean, I'd like to see some of our former friends play well in the playoffs.
Not traded. Here's an interesting tidbit for you. Guys that were rumored to be dealt that did not get dealt. Zach Gallen, real good pitcher with Arizona. Mitch Keller, another good starting pitcher with Pittsburgh. Alcantara, excellent pitcher with Miami. Dylan Cease of San Diego. Mackenzie Gore of the Washington Nationals. Luis Robert of the Chicago White Sox. And a guy by the name of Stephen Kwan of the Cleveland Guardians. Thank God he didn't get traded. Now, 63 players ranked among their previous organization's top 30 prospects got traded. And the number 1 rated prospect, Leo DeVries, a shortstop, goes to the Athletics from San Diego. There was a big rumor that they were offering him to the Guardians for Kwan. Obviously, it did not come about. I'm going to mention some of these prospects' names. Now, this may go in one ear and go out the other, but I'm going to do it for a purpose. Some of these guys will turn out to be busts, but some of them may turn out to be all-stars, and there may be a couple that turn out to be superstars. So if you got a good memory, remember these names. Eduardo Tate, catcher, goes to Minnesota in the Duran deal from Philadelphia. Mick Abel, relief pitcher, to Minnesota, also in the Duran deal from Philadelphia. 5th, I'm jumping over a guy. Tyler Locklear, first baseman, to Arizona in the Suarez deal from Seattle. Kendry Rojas, left-handed pitcher to Minnesota in the Miller deal from Toronto. Braden Nett, right-hand pitcher to the Athletics in the Miller deal from San Diego. James Tibbs III, an outfielder to the Los Angeles Dodgers in the Dustin May deal with Boston. Sammy Stafuro, shortstop to Pittsburgh in the Hayes deal, Ke'Bryan Hayes from Cincinnati. Jesus Baez, infielder to St. Louis in the Helsley deal from the Mets. Boston Bateman, left-handed pitcher to Baltimore in the O'Hearn deal with San Diego. Cole Drake, left-handed pitcher to Arizona from Texas. Griffin Herring, left-hand pitcher to Colorado in the McMahon deal with the New York Yankees. Rafael Flores, catcher to Pittsburgh in the Bednar deal with the Yankees. Ryan Bergert, relief pitcher, right-hand pitcher, I should say, to San Diego in the Fermin deal for Kansas City. And then Jerron Watts Brown, right-handed pitcher to Baltimore in the Dominguez deal with Toronto. The fourth rated, I went through them in order, 1 through 16, as the top acquisition. The fourth one is the kid we got for Bieber. How do you pronounce it? Cal, I guess?
I believe it's Cal Steven.
Cal Stephan or Steven, right-handed pitcher in the Bieber deal from Toronto. And he was a second-round pick last year. Mississippi State, 6'4". 94 to 96 he's been clocked at. 83, 85 mile per hour changeup. Only 18 walks and 91 2/3 innings at Double-A right now. So we got a good one. As far as the rankings of the teams that got these prospects, the Athletics, according to CBS Sportsline, did the best. DeVries, Net, Baez, DeVries, highest ranked prospect to ever get traded at the deadline. We could have had him, but we would have had to give up Quan. Minnesota, Tate and Abel. Arizona, next, Locklear. Right-handed pitchers, Hunter Creston and Juan Burgess. And then Baltimore with Bateman and Watts Brown. So there you have it. We got a real good one, supposedly. You never know with these kids. But anyway, there's the rundown of the trade deadline. We shall see what happens as we head down the stretch. We'll see what happens with the Browns as they open up their preseason schedule on Friday against Carolina. That's next on Bonus Time. I love you, Menor Nissan. Hi, Bruce Drennan here from my good friends at Menor Nissan. Ray Sminchak, the whole staff. As you know, I've been doing a lot of our shows down in Florida. Just returned. Great to be back on the home confines of our beautiful studios here at Burke Lakefront Airport for Big Play. But I got to tell you, I drove my Nissan Rogue from Menor Nissan down to Florida, had the rack up on top with extra luggage. It was absolutely the most splendid, beautiful ride. Just as smooth as could be. My wife also drives a Rogue. We rotated driving down there and back, but I just can't recommend it any more so to you. Get on out there, test drive a Rogue or a Murano or any of the other great products that they have out there at Menor Nissan. Don't forget, they're now in partnership with Infinity of Akron and Infinity of Beechwood. Check those great vehicles out as well. Service department is absolutely fantastic. Went back to the dealership to get maintenance after that long drive down there and back. And give them a call. Set up an appointment. Of course, check out their website at MenorNissan.com. That's MenorNissan.com. I love you, Menor Nissan. Well, as I said, we're welcoming Nick Padone, the host of Big Play Cleveland and our director of programming here at the Big Play Sports Network. Always fun to have Nick on the show. How you doing, partner?
I'm good, Bruce. How are you?
Just did the doing good. Just took a lesson with my new graphite irons. I love them. Anyway, but you couldn't care less. The previous segment, Nick, I touched on football and the starting quarterback situation with the Browns. I think it's going to be Flacco, regardless if Sanders is going to start Friday, and they brought in Huntley simply for the preseason. Let's face it. They got to make a trade. Your take?
It's a puzzling situation, isn't it? I mean, it feels like the island of misfit toys. You've got 4 guys that nobody really wanted. You know, Kenny Pickett was the first guy that they acquired. I think they really like him. He's gotten a king's ransom of the snaps in training camp, and I don't think that's by accident. He was the first guy that they went out there and got. They traded a draft pick plus DTR, which I know there wasn't much there, for Kenny Pickett. I don't think anybody else was really knocking down Howie Roseman's door to get the backup quarterback away via trade. Then you go out there and sign Joe Flacco, the 40-year-old vet that'll turn 41 before the Super Bowl is played this year. Obviously, he took us on a magic carpet ride in 2023. Everybody remembers how fun that was, how competent the offense was. And you felt like, okay, you've got two solid vets heading into the NFL draft where they take Dylan Gabriel in the top 100 was a little bit of a head scratcher to everybody. I think, obviously Shedeur Sanders was still on the board at that point. Will Howard from Ohio State, Kyle McCord, all of those guys still on the board. Browns really like Dylan Gabriel. He's also become a player that's had a lot of time with the first team, and it feels like they're trying to get him ready and up to speed. And then the Shedeur Sanders thing happens, and he falls into their lap there in the 5th round after every NFL team had the opportunity to pass on him 3 times. So this whole thing is crazy. I agree with you. I think the simple path is to start Joe Flacco week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals. When you look at the NFL season, you're looking at this locker room, are they in a little bit of a rebuild and a retool? Absolutely. You said it, Bruce, that for literally the last 2 years that we've worked together and that you've been on this network, the Deshaun Watson trade would set the Browns back 5 years. Where are we not living in that right now with these cast of characters that you have in there? But this isn't as dark as the days were in 1-31 because you have some talent on this roster. You convinced Myles Garrett to come back, and dangling $40 million annually in front of him was able to seal that deal. David Njoku still exists on this roster. Denzel Ward, Joel Bitonio. Like, there's talent throughout. Although it's sparse, it's not like this was Hugh Jackson and Sashi Brown stripping this thing down to the studs. So I think Kevin Stefanski has to look a guy like Joel Bitonio in the eyes and say, hey, we're going to go out there week 1. We're going to try to win a football game for you, Joel.
Are they with these quarterbacks, specifically Sanders and Gabriel, making a decision here in the preseason? Because somebody's got to go. And if you're of the belief that Flacco is going to be the starting quarterback, you make a case for Pickett, and they went for him too. But are they simply filling the gap until next season where they get their quarterback of the future, because that's going to be an incredibly enriched class of quarterbacks? Kid from South Carolina, LSU, let alone Manning. There's plenty of them in next year's first round, and they not only have their own pick, but they definitely now have Jacksonville. I don't think Jacksonville's going to be that high myself. I think they're going to contend with Houston in that very winnable division, but that's neither here nor there right now. Are they really just filling the gap and looking at next year to get that big quarterback?
It feels like it, Bruce. It does. It feels like what they're trying to do this year is they're taking a bunch of crap, they're going to throw it at the wall, and they're going to see if any of it sticks. But what's fascinating to me, we had Dan Lobby, who does a really nice job covering the Cleveland Browns for Cleveland.com, on the Big Play Cleveland show, and he said something that stuck with me, and it's replayed in my head every single day talking about this quarterback situation. And he said, in order for the Browns to not draft a QB in 2026, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, or Kenny Pickett would have to give them a resounding yes that they are that guy moving into 2026. And when you're looking at already starting the season with Joe Flacco, and the first 6 games of this Browns schedule is a gauntlet. You open it up with the Cincinnati Bengals, and then you go to Baltimore, then you've got the Green Bay Packers, then you go to Pittsburgh, a place that you haven't played in.
Detroit too.
Yeah, Detroit's in there. You go across the pond to Minnesota. So it's a gauntlet of a schedule. You're probably going to have the reliable vet Joe Flacco, because you know that even if you're not winning those games, he's not going to let the lows get too low, and he's not going to let the highs get too high. That's why you trust him and you rely on him. So with that said, if the first 6 games are going to be Joe Flacco, is Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, or Shedeur Sanders even going to give an opportunity to have that resounding?
But you got to
yes?
find out, Nick. You got to find out about them.
You do, but I feel like in a 12-game sample size, it's just not going to be enough to show to the ownership group, to Andrew Berry, to Kevin Stefanski, if they're even still around to make the draft selections next year, that they can be the guys moving forward.
I think they will be. I think what happened with the Browns with that revolving door of coaches and GMs has taught Haslam we've got to have some stability. So they've got this year, regardless of below 500 they may indeed be. And look, what is the over/under? 5.5,
Yeah.
5, something like that.
5.5, and that might seem high. You know, we kind of made the joke this morning. The win total is set at the amount of quarterbacks that they have right now, with 6.
But that's feasible. I could see them winning 6 or 7 games if they. And here's another thing: if they throw Flacco out there, and especially before the bye, with that brutal schedule before the bye. And he is 40 years old. If he gets hurt, he certainly got some backups, and then they would get their opportunity to show whether they need to go for the quarterback next year or not.
And I think this whole week has taught us that it's just so difficult to predict and to project those type of things, because a week ago, you're looking at who's starting preseason game number 1. Nobody had that being Shedeur Sanders. He hadn't even spent any time with the first team, and now he's getting ready to start a game for our Browns on Friday.
The injuries, though, too,
right?
The hamstring injuries played into that.
For sure.
I found it kind of humorous when Sanders came out this last week and said he doesn't want his dad anywhere near the camp and that. And what's your take on that?
I will say, I think Shedeur Sanders has handled himself tremendously well. And I don't want to give the kid a pat on the back too hard for doing his job and for being an adult. But the one thing that everybody was fearful about that draft selection was, oh boy, start up the circus. It's going to be the Sanders show in Cleveland. And it has not been that. He is at practice. He missed practice the other week with that sore shoulder.
Right.
I'm told that's because he's throwing 100 footballs before they even go out there on the practice field with some of these guys, these deep receivers on the roster that are never going to make the team, just because he wants to stay ready. He knows he's not getting that share of snaps with the first team and the second team at practice, but he wants to stay ready for when his opportunity does come. He's there tremendously early. He's there tremendously late getting that work in. Like, I do think Shedeur deserves a smidge of credit, because everybody thought that this was going to be some sort of circus, and it has not been.
So which one is the odd man out? Who's going to get traded?
I think I think if you're looking at the rookies, and The Athletic had a report that after the Browns drafted Shedeur Sanders, they're in the 5th round, teams picked up the phone and they were calling on Dylan Gabriel. So we got to see if his hamstring injury, can he get on the field in maybe the second preseason game?
He was throwing the best in camp.
Yeah,
until he had the hamstring.
So we've got to see how that plays out. But I think Kenny Pickett is probably the most tradable, just because if you're a team
that's got a track record,
and if you're a team that's desperate for a quarterback, you could kind of sell yourself on the dream, right? That this is a guy that's won games in the National Football League before.
Yeah.
Has it been? Have there been bad moments? Absolutely. The Steelers didn't get rid of him just because they didn't like him and they preferred somebody else. He is a bit of a project, but I think
Howard got hurt too.
Somebody would gamble on the upside. That was disappointing to see, because I'm
curious to see how good he's going to be. He could be a real sleeper like Brady was. I'm not saying he's the next Tom Brady. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's ridiculous. But the point is that Brady was a sleeper, and Howard could be a sleeper and turn out to be a real good one. All right, Nick Padone will join us for another segment. We'll shift gears, go back to baseball, talk about the Guardians' chances of making the playoffs. That's next on Bonus Time here on Big Play.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Lake Spur Marketing, connecting your brand to the right customers. Visit lakespurmarketing.com today.
All right, more with Nick Padone, host, of course, of Big Play Cleveland and our director of programming here at the Net. Are they going to be able to do it? Are they going to make the playoffs?
How crazy is this, Bruce? The fact that we're even having this conversation. I was telling the crew this morning, think about this. 9 days ago felt like one of the darkest days that this organization has had in a really long time, when Emmanuel Clase gets put on that MLB commissioner's exempt list, and then you Colorado Rockies, who are literally historically going to be one of the worst teams in the history of baseball, come to town and beat you that day with your old friend Tyler Freeman as the hero. It felt like that Monday was the darkest day that I can remember the Cleveland Baseball Organization having. And it seems like ever since that day, they've done nothing but fight. I mean, they've got the New York Mets. That series was a big win for them. That's a good baseball team. So it's like, I know the schedule is softened, and that's what the haters will be able to say is, oh, they're beating up on bad baseball teams. New York Mets have won 63 games already. You look at the top 4 in that lineup, that payroll is more than the entire Cleveland Guardians payroll.
Yeah, I went through that schedule a week or two ago as what they had left after the break, and everybody said, oh, it's a lot easier. Well, yeah, it got easier with the White Sox, supposedly Colorado, Baltimore, teams like that. They also had some contenders in there, too, that they're going to have to battle down the stretch. And as we mentioned earlier, Detroit, of course, is one of them. We've got, I think, 6 games left with them. They've come down to earth. Now, I don't think it's feasible that we can catch them, even though we do have 6 games with them. That comes down to the math, as I've preached for decades. You have to look at what the Guardians' winning percentage would have to be with Detroit merely playing .500 ball. That's the way you have to gauge making up that big of a deficit with less than 2 months to go in the season. But the wild card's within reach, Nick.
It really is. It's right there. It's prime for the taking. You know, we talked about it at the Colleague Companies Championship when I was on your show, and I just said that the one thing that Guardians fans could hold on to hope to, because this season has been such an up and down roller coaster, you could hold on to hope that the rest of these American League contenders for that wild card spot, they've all got big time holes. And boy, are they starting to be exposed as the Guardians are making up ground in real time.
The Yankees maybe more so than to really enhance your point. The Yankees may be the biggest example of it.
Yep.
They just activated Luis Gil, who got bombed in his comeback.
Yep.
And obviously, Fried has been a godsend for them with Cole not being available all season long. But you're right. But, you know, Seattle was quite active. I went through that in the first segment, Nick. They were active in before the trade deadline. And how about Boston? I mean, here they trade Devers.
Yep.
And ever since, they've been scorching hot.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that, you know, there's some fun internet conspiracy people that said maybe this is what they wanted all along when they brought Alex Bregman in the offseason. This was the master view, to be able to win baseball games, you know, in August and September when it matters more now. And that's the thing for the Guards, right? Like, as fun as this last week has been, and they certainly are making ground, the consistency is going to be the biggest thing. Like, they need to be able to continue to score runs like they've been able to over this stretch.
But I mean, last night they won this game. I went through that. They won this game not only with small ball, soft ball. Yeah. And I'm not talking about 12-inch. You know, they gotta have some power. But I think it still comes down to that pen. They got to get 5-6 innings out of the starters, which is better than at the beginning of the season, Nick. But that pen is going to be the key without Clase. Now, let me ask you this. Will we ever see Clase and Ortiz in a Guardians uniform again?
I truly hate to say this, and I think, you know, with this investigation, you're innocent until proven guilty, and right now, all that we can say is that these were allegations that are thrown out against these guys, and we don't know anything with any certainty. However, with what's being alleged, it's some pretty sticky stuff, and it's some pretty serious stuff. I like to tell people to go look at the situation that the San Diego Padres had last year, where they had a young man who was put on the MLB's commissioner exempt list because of a gambling investigation, because he bet on the San Diego Padres to win a game as part of a parlay when he was injured and away from the team. So he was injured and away from the team, bet on his team, his guys to win, banned from the sport of baseball for life. So if the MLB has concrete findings against Clase and Ortiz, I have to believe that what they did, despite it just being a pitch or two, they're manipulating the outcome of specific at-bats and then at large the entire game. And I fear that Major League Baseball could make an example out of these guys, but it all comes back to, do they have the evidence, Bruce? And that's the piece that we don't know.
When you look
now.
at those pitches that those guys threw, that are, you know, in question, my goodness gracious. Major League Baseball, in a way, only has themselves to blame for this, because they got greedy with the money in allowing gambling to be incorporated into their sport, legalized gambling of their sport. And but that's not condoning it with Clase and Ortiz or anybody else, because they're already making good bucks. I mean, not so much in the case of Ortiz, but Clase was. And I just don't get the temptation of trying to make extra cash. And here's the other thing, Nick. If indeed it's not a lifetime ban, how will that clubhouse greet them if they are allowed to come back?
I wonder. I heard, from somebody that covers the team that next day when they showed up to the ballpark after the Emmanuel Clase news was public, Jose Ramirez, the word unhappy doesn't summarize the expression on his face and his body language as he handled his business before they went out there for the game. And you got to understand that. He was probably furious. Yes. This is a guy, you're specifically with Clase. You look at the Guardians as an organization, and I tend to agree with you. The most stable, responsible organization in town. But the one knock on them, and the one thing that the haters will always get their licks in about, is that they don't spend the money. That's the one thing that the
Nor
people
to the
get
Milwaukee Brewers, and I covered them a little earlier in the show.
The one guy that they committed money to in Emmanuel Clase, and then you go and you disrespect your teammate and Jose Ramirez like this, I do wonder if they're welcomed back or if they're even wanted back by the guys in that clubhouse. I don't know.
It is a big question. I've always thought that was so unfair. We got Encarnacion. He was right. They paid him big money. Swisher and Bourne were paid big money at the time. They didn't work out.
Even just recently,
but that's not the point.
Andres Jimenez, everybody was clamoring for that contract. Gold glove turned into a platinum glove, and I get that the offensive production never matched the contract, but you can't deny that was the best defensive second baseman in the game.
Nick, fans do not understand the economics, the difference of the economics of baseball as opposed to the NBA and the NFL that have salary caps.
And revenue.
They don't understand it. The most obvious example I can give is that the Green Bay Packers get the same amount of money as the New York Giants and the New York Jets and the LA Rams and all these big markets, the Chicago Bears, as far from the league. That's not the case in baseball.
In Green Bay, for people that have never been, is about the size of Twinsburg or Solon. It's not a mega city if you've never visited Wisconsin.
Nice portion of the country, though.
It is really nice.
Not so nice in January or February, but Door County's beautiful. It's really nice. Nick, can't thank you enough, buddy. As always, keep up the great work on your show, Big Play Cleveland with Gab and the crew and Chris and all. But thanks for joining us. Let's do it again, partner.
For sure. Appreciate you, Bruce.
All right, Nick Padone. All right, we'll be back in a minute. I want the coaches' top 25 in college football's out. We're going to be featuring Mark Lawrence in a couple of weeks to preview the college football season. It's almost upon us. That's next.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Smart Choice Windows. Energy-efficient products at an affordable price. Visit smartchoicewindows.com today.
Once again, our thanks to Nick Padone. Good stuff. Want to chime in on anything that he stated, his opinions?
I kind of feel the same way as him about, I think Kenny Pickett is the most feasible one to trade. I think they would hope, or you would try to sell the dream that Kenny Pickett could potentially be a franchise quarterback, Bruce. But everything about this Cleveland Browns team is just absolutely confusing.
Well, the one thing that Nick brought up, he's the most... he's the biggest commodity of quarterbacks. Sure. I mean, Flacco's age, the other two are rookies. Pickett's got a track record, so there might be some interest where we could get something more of value in exchange for him. But we shall see. We shall see. First preseason game is Friday against Carolina. How about that? All right, well, the college football season is almost upon us, and the coaches' top 25 poll, preseason poll, is out. Texas is the #1 team in the country, and our defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes are #2. And guess what? They play each other to start the season. How about that, Ryan? What a matchup indeed, Manning against our Bucks in the shoe.
A lot of people upset that that's a big noon kickoff, Bruce. A lot of people want to see that under the lights, but I'm just
me.
excited.
I go to bed early now.
I agree, Bruce. I'm asleep by 9 p.m. A big noon kickoff is fine for me, but you mentioned already going to be one of the best games of the week.
Yes.
You pair that on with Clemson and LSU, a week 1 matchup. We are just going to start the college season with some fireworks.
Yeah, and it should be interesting to see how Manning does with Texas because he is a possible candidate for the Browns quarterback of the future, so keep an eye on him. But Texas, Ohio State, what a way to start the campaign. I was a little surprised that the coaches have got Penn State number 3, Ryan. You know, I'm not a huge Franklin fan. I guess it's because they did do well in the postseason last year.
And it's Drew Aller. And I feel like every season we come in and maybe Penn State and alongside with Clemson are a little overhyped. You know, they're popular brands, but James Franklin, as you mentioned, has failed to win big games his whole entire career. You know, Penn State, I'm surprised that James Franklin is still there. I think at some point push has to come to shove when you're going to look for the next coach to get you up to that upper echelon. And maybe they're giving him one more year with Drew Aller. I think after that, once you find your next quarterback, perhaps you look for a new regime. But a big, big year for James Franklin.
And a big year for Allard, too, because of his prospects as a real top-notch pro quarterback. Georgia's 4, Notre Dame 5, Clemson 6, Oregon 7, Alabama 8, LSU is 9, and rounding out the top 10 is Miami. Only Clemson and Miami in the top 10 are not from the Big Ten or the SEC. Now, following Miami at number 10, you've got Arizona State, Illinois, South Carolina, Michigan, Ole Miss, SMU, Florida, Tennessee, Indiana, Kansas State, Texas A&M, Iowa State, BYU, Texas Tech, and Boise State. 15 of the top 25 ranked teams by the coaches are from the Big Ten and the SEC. What does that tell you? I think aren't you looking forward to when Rutgers has to travel to Washington?
Oh, I'm sure the swimming teams, the softball teams are all looking forward to going across the country.
Yeah. But anyway, we're going to have Mark Lawrence on, the nationally known handicapper. We have featured him since we started our show here on Big Play. I go way, way back decades with Mark. He's a Clevelander, but he's been based in Miami for many years. And I talked to him the other day on the phone, and he's agreed to come on and preview. He does a great playbook magazine previewing both the pros and college, but I want to concentrate on the colleges with Mark, and he's going to be coming on our show in the next couple of weeks. So we'll look forward to welcoming him and previewing the college football season, and certainly also Lee Owens, the former head coach at Ashland University, who was an assistant at Ohio State before he got the job of Ashland. He has written a book, and I want to have Lee on the show to talk college football with him. Also, we got some high school football previews coming for you here on Bonus Time with Drennan on the Big Play Sports Network. Ask Bruce segment next.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Pure AV, luxury home automation. Experience your dream smart home by visiting pureavcorp.com.
You know, Ryan, we're entering what I consider the best time of the year for sports. Once we get into the month of September, you've got the baseball playoffs and the World Series. You've already started college and professional football. It is a fantastic time of the year, and we're getting close. All right, Ask Bruce segment, fire away.
Alrighty. Hey, Bruce, what have you noticed differently about the Guardians' play since snapping that infamous 10-game losing streak?
It's not so much that I've noticed anything differently, but it's a reflection on the leadership of Terry Francona and now Stephen Vogt. And that is, both of these managers seem to get these players into a mindset that they do not give up on the year, on the season. I don't know if you noticed, but Francona's got the Reds playing pretty good ball going down the stretch. Now, whether they can cut it and qualify as a wild card remains to be seen. But it just enhances my point about both he and Vogt. They have a knack to bring out in these players that they are not out of it. Don't disbelieve. There's peaks and valleys in baseball, more so than any other sport. because of being the marathon sport of a 162-game regular season. And I just think it's really commendable. And by the way, let me throw this out at you and you, Ryan. If they make it as a wild card, do you not have to give vote consideration again for manager of the year?
I mean, you know what, Bruce? You're not completely wrong on that. I can't think of a situation where we've seen, obviously, your closing pitcher, the best closing pitcher in baseball, maybe not statistically this season, but in general, go out for the year. A starting pitcher, nonetheless, who was one of your bright spots in the rotation. It kind of similar to when we were considering like J.B. Bickerstaff, or because of the injuries, getting to the playoffs, there is consideration there, Bruce.
Right?
I completely agree. Alrighty, hey, Bruce, since Clase has been out, do you want to see Cade Smith cement the closer role, or do you like the closer by committee approach?
Well, I think by design, it's better to have a designated closer. I mean, the trend now in the majors is you have your 7th inning setup, your 8th inning setup, and then your closer to close out the ball game. I'd like to see Smith assume that role. Obviously, I love Gaddis too, but we have such an enriched bullpen. We could go by committee as well. I have that much confidence in this bullpen. And the guys that have been injured this year that we haven't even had available to us all season long, and kids in the minors, we are loaded with relief pitchers. It's really enriched.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, with CJ Kafis getting called up to play right field, could you foresee John Kenzie Noel getting recalled for one Nolan Jones?
Boy, I don't know. I was totally in favor of that platoon idea of Noel and Jones at the beginning of the year. Lefty, righty, and Jones getting new life coming back here to Cleveland after Colorado, and he had a very good year 2 years ago in the Mile High. But, I'd hate to see either one of them go elsewhere and be a Jesus Aguilar, if you will, and that's happened. That happens to every major league team. Another example in Cleveland goes way back to Jay Bell, who was certainly given ample time, fair time to be the starting shortstop of the Indians, and he was a bust, and he goes to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he was a perennial all-star every year. You just don't know about these guys.
Alrighty, last one for you, Bruce. Hey, Bruce, how soon do you believe Bazzano will get called up to AAA? And when he does, what are fair expectations for the young man?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see him here in September, just to get his feet wet a little bit. I don't see him necessarily starting with the big league club coming out of spring training next year, but I think definitely we will see him in the big show next year. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. What really concerns me is DeLauder as injury prone as McKenzie. I hope not, but it's looking in the minor league career anyway that he's got some nagging things about this thing, it's that thing, and let's get this DeLauder healthy so we can see what he can do in the big show, because they say his potential is unlimited. Unfortunately, we are limited with our time, and we're out of time for this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. I'm Bruce Drennan on behalf of Ryan Smith. Hope you enjoyed the show. Join us next week. As always, look forward to it. Until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio, and I love you, Cleveland.